G'day, g'day, wherever you are. Welcome to Mastering Music, Mastering Life. Tony Jack the Bear Mance in the house again from Deluxe Mastering in my beautiful hometown of Melbourne, Australia. And today I've got the guy that literally wrote the book on mastering. He's in Orlando, Florida. He runs the Digital Domain. He's one of the finest mastering engineers on the planet, one of the smartest people I know as well. He writes code, he masters, he does a whole bunch of stuff. We'll find out more about his other pursuits outside of mastering. But Bob Katz, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Glad. I enjoy being had.
Yeah. Hey, how long has it been since we've last spoken? Many years, hasn't it, really? Like this?
Probably.
20
it could have been, spoken, you mean in person?
Well, in person, we saw each other in what, 95, I think it was.
It had to be 97 or 96 or later.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway.
Boy, I've gone through like at least 2 or 3 sets of speakers since then.
Yeah, you had those Swiss ones, then you got the Lipinskis. So what are you rocking these days?
A pair of 8-foot tall Dyne Audio. They're called the M5P. They're the Essence. They weigh 300 pounds a piece.
Yeah.
What are you running right now?
Me, dude, I'm just running the dirty old Regents, the Duntech Regents.
Well, those are fabulous. They're beautiful speakers. If you keep them working and you can get spare tweeters, you're going to be in great shape. Yeah,
no, that's good. We just had the woofers redone about 2 years ago, no, everything's running really well. I got my eye on a pair of Sovereigns, which I'll be buying from another studio for Deluxe.
To replace these?
No, for Deluxe 2.0 for the future.
All right.
Another setup, expansion, Bob, expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, mate, so good to see you. So good to have you on the podcast. You were one of the guys I've been wanting to have on for some time, but, just getting around to it. But here we are, having a chat about life and mastering and what you've been up to. So what have you been up to, Bob? How's life going for you?
Well, this morning, it's important to enrich other parts of your life, if possible.
I completely agree.
Yeah, this morning, Mary and I went out shooting, only a different kind of shooting,
mm-hmm.
Photo shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I shot birds at Gatorland, and so did Mary. And I can show you some of what I do when I'm not doing sound, if you want.
Yeah, I'd love that. But before we go there, what I'd like to know is how's going in the studio at the moment.
What's happening?
Yeah, what's happening? How's it going? You were okay. When we spoke last week, a few days ago, when we hooked this up, you were testing a compressor.
Right. Well, a new compressor. I don't know if they're ready to announce it. It's in the box, and preliminary listening and measurements show it to me as the most analog sounding digital compressor that I've run into. And that's exciting because it's really hard to get something in the box that works as sweetly and musically as our analog tools, I think. I don't know. What about you?
To be honest with you, Bob, I'm the least technical guy on the planet. I just know what sounds good to me and what works on a track. So,
well, tell me what you've been using.
Me, look, other than the good old look, my chain is predominantly analog, but I think if I'm going to use the digital stuff, for me is primarily more the surgical stuff. So before I go into an analog loop, I will do things like any de-essing, or any kind of bottom end control, which I love using the FabFilter multiband. So I'll grab a band of that and do a little bit of tightening there before we go into any of the any sort of the coloration. So yeah, that's kind of it, man. I keep it really simple, Bob. I don't understand what the hell goes on from the source to the destination. I just like people come up and say to me, "So what was your takt time you used on the on this Vertigo?" And I said, "Oh, it says 2." Now, I don't know what the fuck 2 means in milliseconds or microseconds or milliseconds or fucking macroseconds, whatever the fucking units are. I just know it sounds good.
And it's different from the Vertigo to the API to the Mazalek. They're all different anyway. And
they're all completely different. Exactly. And like I just tell them, hey, take photos, take videos, do what you want. You're not going to replicate this when you get home with your UAD plugs. You can try, but it ain't going to work.
Yeah, we shouldn't be afraid of anybody attempting that, because they won't. And even if they had exactly the same gear as I had, it would be very doubtful that they could replicate it. And that's, I'm not even worried about that, because it's an art, and if they came back next week, it could be subtly different. You never know.
You know, absolutely. My take on when it comes to showing clients what I do or sharing information or knowledge for that matter is fine. I personally prefer to have a client that actually has a clue about what I do, because then they're going to understand, more importantly, what I can't achieve as opposed to what I can achieve. It's going to help them do better mixes. It sets up a dialogue, sets up the relationship. And as you know, how we relate to our clients and take care of them is paramount, especially in this day and age where we have so much choice, so many great engineers, so much value for money, where the differentiating factor now is not so much, well, I got this bit of kit or that or this or these speakers or this room design. It's the love for the client. So, you know, I'm happy for them to be able to generate their own masters, and some of them do an exceptionally good job too, Bob. So I think the service aspect is never going to change in terms of what's going to differentiate the more successful engineers and the not so successful ones.
I had one client, who I think could actually tell the difference between the fact that I changed the dither by accident from 1 week to the next. But most people, they don't get into the weeds. They don't care. They just want it to sound nice, if possible.
Well, if there's a guy that gets into the minutia, you're it, man.
I'm afraid so. That's my weak link, you know, is sometimes one of my weaknesses is I'll if I can hear a difference, I might spend a little too much time on it, but I've learned not to, but the temptation is there. And it won't, if it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter. Or a good rule is, if it takes me more than 5 minutes to figure out, okay, I'm talking about dither here, but just as an example, if it takes me more than 5 minutes to figure out what's the best dither, that's a problem. Let's just stop there, because it's going to be inaudible. The difference will be inaudible to most people. And that's a good rule, I think.
Yeah. My rule is 5 seconds.
Well, somewhere between 5 seconds and 5 minutes, we're gonna compromise in between there. How about,
sorry, Bob.
How about 7 seconds?
So, actually, yeah, good song. Do you remember that song, 7 Seconds? Peter Gabriel and the Suradua?
Oh, Gabriel! Oh my God, I mastered an album that was recorded at Real World Studios. What an incredible acoustic!
Yeah,
there. It was a jazz group, and nominally a trio, but they were doing some rock-like pieces. And if you record something in a great room to begin with, our work is so much easier, I think.
Yeah, but I think good. What about good players? What about
of course. Yeah, that comes first.
And I'm no expert, but I understand, Bob, that a good mic and good mic placement kind of helps the cause a little bit.
Okay. Well, the customer doesn't go home humming the console or the microphone, that we know. So it's the performance. And, you know, the vocalist probably, if it's a vocal, is what they listen to the most. And on another topic is how many mixes come to you where the mixing engineer, if he or she was the producer, so nominally the producer, even though of course the artist may have been the producer on these indie projects, where the vocal is too low because they were so enthralled with the instrumental mix that they created. How many are you getting like that?
To be honest, I haven't had that conundrum. If anything, No, not too low, not too low. Usually, it's a case of if there is a conundrum, usually maybe too high because they're all wanting to be, pop, and they want it to be radio friendly and whatnot.
Maybe it's genre specific, because on occasion in the rock genre, in R&B, in gospel, in Latin music, I've seen them get so enthralled by the instruments. But come to think of it, it hasn't happened as much lately. The more experienced the mix engineer that comes to me, the less that's a problem. Except for the other way. Oh, you're absolutely right. In the pop field, they often tend to push it way, way too far. And I don't know if it's because they're working with divas who insist, or what it is. If they're trying to emulate something just to be in style, I don't know.
Yeah.
It helps to have a perspective that goes back decades if you can.
Tell me, do you still get requests for stem mastering?
I stem master, I would say 20% of the time.
Yeah.
And I would say of that, half of that, it comes from my request if I hear a problem. And only if I think that they're way on the track, that their mix is almost perfect, but maybe they're having a trouble, which often happens, getting the bass instrument right. And I'll say, okay, can you give me a separate bass stem from the rest? I do shy away from actually remixing, because that's not our job.
Yeah.
But even that happens on occasion, and I'm not too shy to, if I really love the music and I think that they're not that skilled in the mix and they're looking for my help as well, I might get asked for 4 to 6 stems. And because at my age, I'm not afraid to suggest even the most radical things if I think it's going to help, but I won't suggest it out of just, I mean, I'm not going to say, if somebody says, Bob, don't you want stems? I'll say, I don't know. I haven't listened yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
my because look, Bob, I can't even mix a drink these days. So I've always found that stem mastering is a quasi mix, and why I shy away from it, apart from the fact that I'm not a mix engineer, but that aside, in the context of the work I do, which is me trying to feel what it's like for Johnny Punch Clock, and you can only listen to a song for the first time once. Once we get into even just balancing an instrumental and vocal, then it becomes, do we ride this during this section of the song? And then it's like, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? And we're having this, I don't know, what do you think conversation. And then it almost negates the purpose of me being there in the first place. So,
well, I would say the number of times when the client would be there with me, hopefully, are relatively little. If they start coming in and talking about that, then probably they should have gone back to their place and worked harder on the mix.
yeah, I just, my work around these days is just suggesting that they send multiple versions. So if, for example, they're a little concerned about the vocal level, whether it's too much or not enough, is to send me I don't care. I said, send me 5 versions plus one in half dib increments, down and up. And then, and then we can make an executive decision on the day, which one sits best. And, and if I'm going to get really, really tricky, I think the last time I got really tricky on it was where these guys sent me a mix and the vocal up mix was better in the choruses and the vocal normal mix was better in the verses.
Oh, yeah.
So I just edit them in, bang, bang. Thanks for coming. And that was it.
It's happened. It's happened.
Not nice and easy. You still get many attended sessions these days, Bob?
Maybe once every month or two.
I love attended sessions. People are surprised when I tell them, A, I don't charge more for them, and B, that I still actually do them. Mind you, a lot of my work too is here in Melbourne's local, but I just love attended sessions, Bob. I love hanging out with clients. I love the connection. I love the relationship building aspect. And over in the States,
you're a people person, and that's important, really important to have that connection. I'll go either way. I'm happy, but I charge by the hour, and I don't charge more for attended sessions, but I've never seen a client be a fly on the wall. So if you charge, if you charge by the hour, we warn them. Mary and I warn them ahead of time that it could cost more if they come in.
Mm.
It's just the way I work. It's just I let them know, and it hasn't discouraged anybody except the ones on the tightest budget. Because if they say they're on a real tight budget, they shouldn't come in.
Yeah.
Maybe you charge flat rate. If that's the case, that's fine.
Yeah, I what I do these days, Bob, is generally a flat rate. So my methodology now is I get people to send stuff into me. I'll have a listen to it in here. I give it a rough run through the board just to sort of see how it behaves. And if there's anything there that I can identify that won't allow me to deliver a master that's going to be reflective of a fee that they're going to be happy with, then we have a conversation about that, and hopefully they can, remedy the any anomalies. If it's really not good or we need a lot of work, then it's a case of, look, would you consider if I sent you to someone that is more experienced,
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of charging, I kind of know roughly, because I work relatively quickly. I think over the years I've learned, I guess, through repetition and experience to work quickly. But the other reason of trying to work quickly is the fact that, our rates certainly my rates have remained stable the last 20 years. I don't think I'm charging that much more now on an album than I did
Same with me.
in 2000.
My rates haven't changed in too long, and Mary always comes after me for that. But let me say that one thing that kind of mollifies, to use a big word, one thing that makes life a little bit nicer is that I offer, and maybe you do too, to listen to one mix of one song long before they come here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give them comments, and I don't charge for that one listen, and it can really help. And I really tell the clients, if you look good, I look good. And so the better the mix that you can send me, the better the master that I can make. And so that'll help. It doesn't go into the hourly charge.
Yeah. Oh, that's something I do as a matter of course and have done for a long time. And that was born out of sort of back in the early 2000s when I was at Sing Sing. And that was a time when...
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because that's...
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, yeah. No, I haven't been to the Sing Sing in New York, but no.
I can get you an invitation if you want.
Hey, well, see your mates? Will they take care of me, Bob?
My cellmates will help you very well.
So long as I got a laptop and some Audi's headphones, I'm good.
That's not what you're wearing now. Those are what, Biodynamics?
No. These are Biodynamics. Yeah, I mean it's overkill for listening to doing a podcast, but it looks good. That's what my life's been about, Bob. It's smoke and mirrors and making myself look better than I actually am. So far it's working pretty well.
Well, you mentioned that I want to get dig a little deeper into the weeds about the mixing thing. Because
Yeah.
I think you're more, you're not a mix engineer. That's fine. But I think that there's probably a little bit more maybe that you do that you haven't admitted to, that I think you're quite capable of doing that can help. Let me just give an example, and at least my point of view. I what Captain Kirk said on Star Trek.
He said a lot of things, but what particularly you're referring to?
Yeah. Base, the final frontier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's my take on it. And bass and bass drum are the hardest things for anybody to get because so many people are mixing with really small speakers and not hearing what it does.
Yeah.
And so if the client's got an absolutely terrific mix, but they're having trouble either getting the bass to be defined well, or where it's sitting in the mix, or it's stepping on the vocal, which happens and they're surprised at it, or the ultra low frequencies, which happens sometimes, get turned up way too far. Although that's easier to deal with in the mastering. If it's like below like 50, you can do a little shelving. But if you want the bass drum to kick it may get in the way of the bass. It's a lot like mixing, but it's not that giant a compromise where you say, "Oh my God, I'm mixing now." You're just trying to help their difficulties without sending them home, because I think that in those cases where the bass is just not sitting right, but you hear that it's there or it should be there, and all the notes maybe are there, but not all of them are sticking out.
Mm.
You could ask for a bass stem and a bass drum stem, and then everything else, or maybe a vocal stem and an instrumental other than that. And in a very short time, with a little bit of separate EQ on the bass, you could raise them from a B mix to an A mix, or to an A master, without compromising your principles of not wanting a mix, I think.
Yeah. Well, even as appealing as that sounds to me, I still go, nope, I'm going to leave that one alone. Because I just don't, I know what I want to hear, but I just don't want to get into a situation where even in that scenario, Bob, I'm still going to have to do 10, 15, 20 passes maybe before we get it right. And I still think a lot of those decisions are still on the producer. But just getting back for a sec, Bob, just to let you know why I did this, for lack of a better word, consult on a mix, even though I'm not a mix engineer. I mean, I just know what I hear in a mix that I'm going to have problems with mastering. So they're the things I bring up in a very broad sense. I'm not going to be able to give details. But back in the day, when in the early 2000s, when the home studio, digital studio revolution was happening, and we were seeing more and more musicians rolling their own mixes, I was getting sick and tired of booking sessions and hearing these mixes that were done by novices, and it was no fault of theirs. And I thought, you know what, fuck this. I think we need to set in some insurance, and that is set up a session, have a listen so we can hear what's going on, that the artist can hear what's going on in terms of the obvious stuff. But even so, in a better environment, they would probably hear other things that they couldn't hear at home that are more production, aesthetic kind of things that wouldn't have affected the mastering at all. But in terms of the overall product and the overall sound and the aesthetic that they were trying to pull out, they would have picked up on some other things. And that's where you build a relationship, and that's where you build connection with people. And also the fact that they know that you actually care about what they're doing.
I mean, that's the most important thing, is the human between you and your other human.
That they care. And, and you're a guy that cares deeply about what you do and about your artists. I mean, you do. And, you may feel that you may go a bit more too deep into it, but I think you're better off being a little more overzealous than not giving much of a care. And that's what I think is what I get a lot of feedback on, is people saying that, there's lack of care factor. And I tell people, you want to do better at your job. Don't get a better EQ or a better compressor or get a new pair of speakers. Just take care of your clients more. Just invest a little time in them. Find out more about them. Get to know a little bit of their history. Actually take some action and show them with your actions that you really want to work with them. And that's what's going to take you a lot further than having the latest EQ or plugin.
Let me talk about an artist that I'm working with now, that maybe didn't realize what she was getting into, and I'm holding her hand. If you want to hear the story, I'll try to keep it.
Yeah, please. Yeah, by all means.
Okay. This is a folk singer, and it's really interesting. She came to me, sent me an email and said, Bob, I sent our mix to this mastering house and that one, and they were of the, middle of the road, middle range mastering houses. And when it came back, either my vocal was squashed to death, or it was harsh, or it was sticking out way too far. And honestly, I should have come to you. She said, can you do a demo master of one song? Well, I would charge for it ultimately. The way I would work it is, I told her that, I'm cutting short here, that if you like what I do, then we'll apply that towards the cost of the whole album. So I said, I would want to do more than just a demo master. Send me of this one song. Send me 2 other songs so I can get an idea of the perspective of the project. And not only, of course, is that important, but also, like you said, it shows her that I care, that I'm really caring. But you know what happened when I heard the material coming into me? I realized that they don't know how to mix or record. And it is folk music, so it's not like they had a zillion tracks. And I've been in this business long enough to know that I could mix and can mix and do mix. And I hope that that doesn't offend you. Sometimes I'll put on my mix engineer's hat. And I told her, I can't master from this mix. The vocal was extremely strident and all over the place and really, really peaky. So it really wasn't even a mix at all. And it turns out her husband did the recording and the mix for her. So, you know, you can see that this is a set of, to be honest, amateurs. And I'm working with them. I asked for stems. They're sending me stems. And it seems like they're going to have to come to me. I'm assuming I have the job because no other mastering house even ventured to tell them that they really needed either to have it remixed by somebody else or for them to remix it with attention, paying attention, better attention to levels and or compression on the vocal. And you know, the mastering houses, what instead what they tried to do was send it through their automatic or manual processors and squish the hell out of it or do something that didn't work to fix what was so broken that I would never have attempted to master it.
Mm. I think you can subjectively make anything better if you just, you know, that is better from that, or create some change, if you will. But, you know, and there's a lot of people that are young and new, and it's very daunting for them to come, and they put a lot of trust in you. And I see it, you know, a few people that'll do exactly what you've said. But here's the thing, Bob, you may be able to fool the client for a day or two a week, but they're going to have someone who knows someone. And irrespective of how subjectively you hear music, because one man's warm is another man's muddy, but nonetheless, I believe that there is a certain line that irrespective of whether you and I can have diametrically opposed views, subjectively speaking, there will be that line that we will both agree on and go, that's just plain wrong. That's just not right. And when you're charging good money for something, this is the sort of stuff that you can ill afford. People cannot like you, and that's okay for whatever reason, but you don't want to give people a justified reason to be able to speak ill of you.
I have a sense of responsibility to that artist. And I just, if she said, I'm sorry, I can't deliver or I won't deliver stems, I would say, I'm very sorry, I can't master this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ready to be mastered. And I would have told her that. But instead, I'm going to take the adventure of working with stems and actually doing a mix. So it's going to become a semi-mix job. And I admit it.
Yeah. Well, I think if you've got, look, as I said, I can't mix a drink, but if I could, that's something, and I had a skill set that I felt that was going to give value to people, then I would offer it as well. But I don't, and I stick to my knitting, as Grandma used to say.
Stick with what you do best. Do you have an analog tape machine?
I used to have one, and I bought it, and I had it reconditioned, and it was, you know, with, you know, Mark Spitz spat on it. You know, it just had, you know, and I spent a truckload of money thinking that, because everyone said, you know, you got to have a 1/2-inch machine. So I did. I had an ATR that was all modified and beautiful. I think I spent quite a bit of money on it, $10,000, I think, as I recall back in the day. It probably got about
US dollars.
I reckon it probably did about 12 hours, if that.
No, I said US dollars.
No, Australian. So that's about $2 American. No, just kidding. I don't, you know, no, I think the exchange range back then, because I bought a Sontec around that time too, I think it was about 75 or 76 at the time. But it was quite a bit of money for a tape machine, but people said, well, you know, you got to get one. It's maybe had 12 or 13 hours of use, and then I sold it and sold it for a loss, unfortunately. So I don't have a tape machine. If I'm going to go down that path, I got the trusty old head here, and give it a little bit of that, mm-hmm. if it's required, and that seems to do the trick. But I know there's all these plugins and emulations, and I just don't venture into any of them, Bob. I just don't have much interest in it whatsoever. Mind you, the young engineers that work here that are more into that and have grown up in that world and are a lot more savvy than I who know me and how I work, will say, "Hey, you've got to check this out. This might be of interest to you." And every now and again, they'll come along with something that I go, "Yeah, you know what? I could use this puppy. This could be a good little thing. I'll put it in my back pocket." So no tape machine.
Oh, I've got a few tricks for you. I thought we could talk. I will reveal one that is very cool. We'll talk about it in a moment then. But the reason I mentioned the analog machine is mine has gotten so little work in the past couple of years that I pulled it out of the studio. It was just taking up space, and frankly, it was affecting the acoustics.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big old Studer. And I just wonder about the people who say that they're still getting analog work. Maybe I'm just not in that circle. Everybody sends me digital files.
Yeah, it's been my reality for the overwhelming majority of work here. And so I'm coming up to 14 years in this building. That's what's been the case. And frankly, I'm quite happy with it. I think also in the past when young kids, or the romanticism around analog and tape, and they'd say, "Oh, and they feel that tape was this panacea magic bullet that was going to fix everything." But for the most part, when you told people this is time and money, 99.9 of them said, "Okay, maybe not."
I have a hard rock group from France who records to 2-inch 24-track and then mixes to digital, so it gets a little bit of that character that they like. But between you and me, in terms of my special sauce, a lot of what I'm doing is to try to undo some of that saturation, because it gets, remember when you said one man's warm is another man's muddy? Well, depending on the monitoring that they have when they're mixing, they could end up mixing muddy without realizing that they're trying for warm.
Yeah.
So it can go too far in that other direction. And I'm not talking about EQ. I'm talking about, and I know you don't necessarily want to play with it, but I'm talking about an upward expander to try to undo some of the squishing of the tape.
Well, the Sonox expander is one of my favorite plugs. I love that thing. I find that thing comes in really useful, especially for those mixers that come in that have been a bit overcooked, and it's like, we don't have the session anymore. The dog ate the homework and the hard drive, and that thing's become a bit of a lifesaver for me. So yeah, I agree. Expander's a great little tool to have. So speaking of tape, what about Uncle Bob's 1-inch tape machine? I wonder if that still gets a bit of a going over.
Or would he admit it? But he has one of everything that's out there, and
oh man,
I mean, if there's the last frontier, the certain of the high-end houses are maybe still getting analog tape, and maybe it's still happening, but I don't think it's going to last more than a couple or 3 more years, in my opinion. I think that everybody's going to, I will miss it in some respects, but I think it's going to go away.
I agree. I remember when I went to Gateway, I think it was 94, I believe. It was still fairly new going in there, and Bob was amazing. He was very gracious and wonderful. And
he's the nicest guy on the planet.
Oh, look, man, it was that to me was a big moment, because he was a hero, and when you have a certain perception of people, you have no idea what they're like in real life, and then you meet them and they're just even nicer and better than you ever could have hoped for. And and when you're a kid and you're bright-eyed and you just hold people in such high regard, and you have these kind of experiences, those things are never lost on me. And that's really one of the reasons why I do this podcast and the mentoring, and you're the same, Bob.
Nice job. Well, nice job that you're doing. And I was talking with Matt about it. You have your own personal and very, very human perspective, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, Bob. Well, here's the thing. And without wanting to embarrass you, but you were also one of those guys who was very pivotal. And for those who don't know, the way I met Bob, I I met Bob through the Glen Meadows Mastering Forum back in the day, and I was planning one of my trips to America to go and do more learning, go to the mastering houses when everyone was so gracious. And Bob didn't know me other than just the communication we'd had between us via email, messenger, iChat, whatever it was back then. And Bob very graciously took me into his home in Orlando, where his studio was run, not knowing me in person. He and Mary were gracious enough to take me into his home and gave me some mastering lessons for days. And I'll never forget the first time I played you a master of mine. I put it on and you listened to it, and you looked around at me with this look on your face of sort of like someone had given you a shit sandwich to eat.
Oh dear. But, I'm learning.
No,
I am learning all the time.
But no, it wasn't. I didn't take it personally. You just gave this look, and you just looked at me and you said, "Sit down over here. Let me show you something." and then you immediately gave me some insights on workflow and plugins and this and that, and you were asking me some really good questions, and I answered them, and you said, "Aha, okay, that's where you're going wrong." So you pointed a few things out, but that was beautiful, man. You didn't have to do that, and it's those kind of things that I walk away from and remember. And people like George Marino, who made his clients sit out for half an hour to take care of him. I mean, it's unheard of. He didn't. I mean, he didn't know me from a bar of soap, but he was so gracious and gave me his time, and nice. God rest his soul. So and Bob as well, Ludwig, and the guys at Gateway. But the point I wanted to make was that when I went there, I remember they took me into this room, and it was like every fucking piece of analog gear, and in some cases 2 of them, just sort of racked up like a record collection.
Sometimes he has 6 of them for surround.
Well, surround, yeah, exactly. And he just had and also just every wall in that joint was just covered in more bloody gold and platinum than Fort Knox. Just the amount of gold and platinum records that he'd accumulated.
You don't get that by accident.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
I mean, maybe the first one, maybe the Reputation one, but it doesn't just keep coming. Like with Al Schmidt, the same deal. It doesn't just keep coming back and coming back and coming back unless people really, really love you. Reputation only goes so far.
That's true. As I always say, character is who you are, and reputation is what people think you are. But speaking of Al Schmidt, I've been having a little bit of interaction with him, and he's agreed to join me at some stage on the podcast when he's feeling well, because I think he's in his early 90s now. And I know he's had a few little health scares of late, but he has agreed, and that would be, I'd feel that would be a personal triumph to get someone like him on, because, that guy just oozes class. And to be at his age, and it's something to aspire towards. I guess, like you, Bob, I never want to retire from doing what I'm doing. I just always want to be doing something in some capacity and having this purpose. But imagine being in your early 90s where most people are already dead, buried, and turned into, worm food. And this guy's still going at it. He's still out at these weekly luncheons that Ivana Manley goes to, still participating. It's amazing. It's something to really aspire towards.
Man, if you die, I'll never speak to you again.
Okay. I got no plans for it at the moment, although if my number comes up, Bob. I can honestly say that if I was on my deathbed today, I have no major regrets in life. I really don't.
You had a scare a while back, and knock on something. You seem to have overcome that, and I was so worried, and I'm so happy to see you up and going, and just the same curmudgeon you've always been.
Thanks, mate. You know what? I think that some of us need a wake-up call or 2 or 3. I've always said I'm a late bloomer and learned the hard way. That's just the way I'm wired. But I guess as long as you learn the lesson. And unfortunately, it shouldn't have to take a health scare or a major loss in life or something that's going to set you back quite a way. But I think that's why it also helps you build resolve. And the strongest and most beautiful people I've ever met have also gone through the greatest shit in life. Sometimes brought upon themselves, and other times not necessarily brought on by themselves, but nonetheless, they were in it and they went through it, and come through the other side and just became nicer, better, calmer people. I feel I'm a lot more chilled and relaxed than I was, back in the day when we first got to know each other, where I was online and getting into online arguments with people and punch-ons, and even in my SIG file, putting in, occasional head kicker. What the fuck was that about? just
I mean, I wish that you could, that I could move the time period to now and have you come and visit and see how things are over here at Digital Domain, just as you wish I could come over and see your multi-room place and how you have progressed. Because as much as I knew then, like to think I know a little bit more, even more now. But hell, I've had my scares. I don't know if we want to talk about it because
it's
this is
up to
supposed to be
it's no, it's up to you. No, Bob, this is up to you. This is our chat, man. If anyone's interested in listening, by all means, they're all welcome to get involved. But I'm here for you, so go for it. Tell me all you want to tell me.
Well, I'll skip the major details because I don't. You know, we could go on and talk about
Well,
all the ins and outs. But in 2000,
hang on, sorry, mate. Well, to quote Tom Petty, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." How's that?
you got it. Thank you. In 2008, I had a quintuple bypass. I don't know if you know that.
I do now.
And yeah, and but 3 or 4 weeks after that, it all went downhill, and I got my arteries started to clog up all over again. But thanks to better eating and moving and walking and doing, I'm stronger now, and the tests show it, than I was before the bypass. So
that's great.
I've crossed that threshold, and I have more endurance now and can walk for ages. And when we went to shoot the birds this morning at Gatorland, I climbed up 4 stories up the ladder and I made it without having to take my my nitroglycerin, and so you know I'm working okay.
So what do you do? Do you have a daily ritual that you go about, or an exercise regime or fitness regime that you uphold as part of your lifestyle now?
Mary and I walk 2 to 3 miles a day and try to do it at least. It seems like nothing, at least 2 days a week, but I'd like to bring it up to 3 or more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been really helpful. This morning I walked, well, a lot. I walked, my Apple Watch says I walked 3 miles, and for me that's a lot, and that was really keeping me up. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, true. I think especially for guys and gals who are doing sedentary kind of work, we need to be moving our bodies and doing stuff. I don't think it requires you to do any kind of elite athlete training or anything over the top. Just some movement in your body, something to get your heart rate up a bit and get some fresh blood and oxygen to your cells and make you feel good and breathing fresh air and getting sunshine, all that kind of good stuff, you know, that keeps you rolling.
And absolutely. I want to change the subject to share some cool things that I have and use. See if your viewers would like to see them also, as to how I document for recall my analog gear.
Yeah, cool. Show it. This will be cool.
All right.
So this is a bespoke system of yours that you've created?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. No, not true. No, it's a company. There it is. That's what I want to show you. Do you see?
Yep. I see it's a
session recall.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with session recall?
Yes, I am. Well, not the software. No. I use I use a bit of paper and a writing stick, or occasionally I'll just take a photo if I need to, and I just take a click of the desk and store it. But no, I am now though, Bob.
Is that large enough for you?
Yeah, that's perfect, man. That's taking up the whole screen. So there's your Maslek MEA2.
Yeah, but the cool thing about this, I'm embarrassed because suddenly I don't remember the name of the French gentleman who is kind of a mastering engineer in his own right, who invented this. He's a great graphic artist, and no matter what piece of gear you may have, he will replicate it for you at a very small fee because he wants to have it in his collection.
Ah, cool.
So,
yeah.
So, and it's just the most easy to deal with thing. I don't have to take text notes or take photographs. I can move and turn the virtual knobs on his pictured machines.
Oh, wow.
These knobs are movable. These switches are movable on the screen with a mouse.
That's great.
So, and this is, for example, the track 9 in a particular song.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the settings. And so it's real easy for me to replicate it. It's not, whoops, come on, where are you? There. It's not, nothing is foolproof, but it's a little more foolproof than the text thing. But if you don't pay attention to the detail, you can make a mistake. One day I started turning the knobs on the screen with the mouse, and oh my God, I just lost my settings because I should be turning the knobs on the real box to match the ones in the picture, not vice versa.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the story of the cowboy who was drunk in the bar, and he says, "I'll show you how to shoot," and he goes, bang, bang. Okay. All right. So, some of the pictures, the images from that session. Okay, there's one of my pendulum ES8 and the settings for that. And then a text note in red showing other little notes that there's a high pass going on in the side chain, and that I adjusted the output to unity with a test tone. So I knew what to do when I had to recall the pendulum. And way up, whoops, I guess I don't have it in this picture. I was going to show you a picture of my Dutch Audio mastering transfer console. But
tell me about that, because I've seen it. It looks sexy.
There it is. There it is.
That looks the business, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is the 1U, because I don't have room for a bigger one, but he has a 2U. And is it big enough to see the knobs? And
yeah. Now we can make it out. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is input gain, and it's switchable. So you can have active gain or not on the input stage.
Nice.
And if you don't have the active gain input or output gains engaged, it's totally passive.
Beautiful.
So, okay. And so, and these labels are better on my actual box. They're actually embedded in the knobs.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wrote on for the session recall is he replicated the front panel of it, but I add labels by putting a text label here.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can quickly see that devices 1, 3, 4, and 5 are engaged. And I can see also, and to be safe, that I had MS engaged on this song only. So, and I put a text note in to say just in case I'm dumb enough to not pay attention, it says I added MS on this song.
Yeah.
So
nice.
I can see that there's MS engaged on, the MS is on both devices 3 and 4. And I could go over what these devices are, but the more important thing is just to see that I can document it, and I can go to the front panel and push the buttons, and they'll go green or orange or whatever. So there's a visual verification that I've matched the settings.
That's cool, Bob. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that would be the puppy I'd get when Deluxe 2.0 becomes a reality. So William Bowden, my good friend William Bowden down Tassie, he's got one of those. I believe I think he's got the 2-rack unit job, if I'm not mistaken. But I definitely know he's got one of those monitor controllers, and he loves it. He just raves about it. So
it's very clean, and it's not very expensive. So I go for it. And I mean, there are a lot of different brands of these, and we could talk about that and make a whole show of it, but I'm not going to do that. So now let's look at some of my photos.
Yeah. So tell me, because your lovely wife Mary's a photographer in her own right.
She is the professional.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that we have a relationship, and we have fun, and our musicality is pictures together. And
well, there's a lot of, it's interesting. I find there's a lot of mastering engineers I know that have taken up some kind of graphic art or photography or videography, editing as a
Really?
side, which is really
You mentioned
interesting.
Ted Jensen. You mentioned
And
Ted
well,
Jensen.
yeah, to Ted Jensen. Ted Jensen takes some fantastic photos, and his partner, Diane Milson, is she's like your Mary, an absolute gun photographer, and he's
She's a
taken
pro?
up. Pardon me.
Is she a pro?
Oh yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Well, where she is, and the quote. I mean, look, I don't know anything about photography. I know what I like, but anything that she's posted up online, it looks fucking fantastic, Bob. And I'd pay money for it. I'd definitely pay money for her photos. In fact, I even offered Ted to take some money for his one of his photos. It was a black and white photo in New York in a winter setting, and it's just gorgeous, Bob. And I offered him, and he just refused to take any money. He was just gracious enough to
Really?
say, yeah, he was just gracious enough to say, no problem at all, man. Here it is. Here's the high res.
Wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great.
So was it Mary's? I mean, Mary's influence, I'm sure. But what was the tipping point where you actually started to get a camera and a lens and started being a shutterbug?
I came in from the technical side, although I'd like to think I have my artistic bent in photos. And when you live with someone who every day brings you in and says, "What do you think of this retouch on this uh, um, headshot that I did, or fashion portrait?" I start to develop the eye, and then we started to take photos together that we're both interested in, because there's a lot of wildlife in Florida, not just alligators in the backyard.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I grew from watching Mary and enjoying what she does, and also because I'm her technical guru. I would help her. I understand things like f-stops and speed and different lenses and so on. And she's more, the artistic bent, and just wants to make it look good. And but she needs, photography, like audio, is both a technical and an artistic art. So I came in from that side and began to show my art, which I'm gonna
Yeah,
show
you
you
just show us
here.
just show us a few more photos there, the ones that stand out
There's
for you.
how big is that? Clear and large
That's,
enough?
that's perfect. It fits the screen perfectly.
Okay. So that's the Portland Head Lighthouse, you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Lake Lucerne in Switzerland.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a postcard right there.
I'd like to think so. And this is Havana, Cuba.
Beautiful. How's that? How's that moon? Havana moon, huh?
Yeah, I call it Moon over Havana, but that's like an original title, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's really striking. I'm happy with that. And how do you like this baby?
It's a wasp.
It's no, it's a
A hornet?
bumblebee.
It's a bumblebee.
No, it's a bumblebee.
It's a bumblebee.
The one they make honey, and this one was enjoying the taste of a flower. But look at how big what the lens that I used makes that be. Okay,
Extraordinary.
and then that's all for now. I mean, I have
Yeah.
photos of birds and alligators and so on.
But don't you think? But I think it's great that to have another interest, outside of, as much as we love music and love mastering, it's great to have something outside of it to give you some balance and come back in feeling refreshed, and just having all the other senses tickled with for a little bit, for a change.
It takes the stress away too. When you start, I mean, as a recording engineer years ago, that's a lot of creativity involved in that. But I miss that. But now the taking of photographs and manipulating them and, so to speak, developing them has become part of my creative flow.
Tell me something, and this is just a curiosity, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer or right or wrong approach. Your book, Mastering, right?
Mastering audio.
Mastering audio, right? You're talking about the art form and I've seen mastering myself personally more as a craft as opposed to art. And some people may say, well, this is just semantics, but the way I see it is this: is that art is the manifestation of an idea, a thought into something. So the idea becomes poetry, sculpture, a painting, a book, a record, what have you. But it comes from the ether, and then it turns into something physical, well, non-physical, but it goes from a thought into the end product. Where a craftsman is someone that takes something that's already pretty much done and then finishes it off, like a French polisher will take a table and make it look beautiful. So I always thought of mastering as the art has been done, the song's been written and mixed, and my job is to take that art and then, as a craftsman, just put finishing touches on it to bring it to its best presentation, to frame the picture as opposed to paint it. So in that respect, I never saw myself as a quote unquote artist or that there was much artistry, but I'm happy to be, to have my mind changed on it, because I know that you have a view, you see art in mastery and there's artistry. And I remember you said you wanted to talk a bit about that. So tell me,
well,
how
some
is
of
that?
it is just definition. I mean, I call it the art, mastering audio, the art and the science.
Yeah.
The art, I mean, it's an art to craft, I think, is a little too it doesn't, I don't think it gives justice to your use of the tools to help to enhance the beauty that's there.
Okay.
If an artist brings you a mix that where the sound is, for example, cold sounding, whatever that means, and that's on purpose an artistic word.
Mm-hmm.
We have to say the craft of mastering would not relate to the term cold or warm, would it?
I'm not sure. I think if you are of an artistic or creative mindset, that would be terminology or language that you could relate to, understand to a degree, even though there may be some scope for interpretation. But I don't know. I've never, to be honest, I've never thought of it that deeply before, and this is why I'm asking you, because I've had I don't know if it's a narrow-minded view, but just a specific view, and that's not diminishing the role of mastering or the importance of the task. I've just always felt that, any record that's become successful that I've had, and let's just define success right now as something that got reasonable amount of radio play and coverage, and in greater situations achieved a gold or platinum sales success. It wasn't because of what I did, because there are so many ducks that needed to line up. I think anyone worth their salt on that given day when that record came to me, if you did it or someone else would have done it, they would have got that gold or platinum record. It would have got the airplay, because it was a great song that was well arranged and well mixed, and there was marketing behind it, and maybe a little bit of luck as well. But nonetheless, there was a team of people that brought this together. And I was lucky that I happened to get a Guernsey, on a team that was going to win the Super Bowl. And they said, look, just go on there for the last 10 minutes of the game. You don't need to do a lot. We just want you to just defend this or defend that. There was no way knowing you, unless you tried to lose the game. You would have had to kick a goal for the opposition, if you know what I mean, or run a try for the opposition. And then you win the game and everyone's getting their championship ring and you get one. You feel like, shit, I didn't get my head knocked off. I didn't throw the winning touchdown. I didn't, defend or block or tackle. And sometimes it feels to me like, shit, I don't know if am I really deserving of this? So again, not diminishing the role, but trying to find perspective in the overall scheme of things.
Well, perspective-wise, we have to be humble, because, as you said, we are not the creators of the song. We didn't do the arrangements. We didn't play the music. We didn't sing the song. But depending on the state that the recording was in before it got to us, we could do the tiniest little touch, or we could do a lot. And in some cases, we could have maybe saved the song.
Mm-hmm.
And but nobody knows how much we did. And that is our biggest secret. Because, you know, if somebody brings me the shittiest mix in the world and I could do nothing with it, and somebody says, how come that sounded so bad? I can say, oh, the problem was in the mix. I couldn't do a thing with it. But or vice versa, it could be the most incredible mix, an A grade, and hardly needs, if anything, any work. But because I put my touch on it, I'll get some credit on it, and nobody knows that I did practically nothing.
Yeah.
So we can have our cake and eat it too, no matter. We can play both sides of it. And I'm not proud of that, but I don't take advantage of it at all, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And but when I do contribute something that helped to take it from a B or B plus mix to an A or an A plus master, I feel proud of it, and the artist is happier than they were coming in. And I think we could say the truth is that it's somewhere between a craft and an art. It's, in my opinion, more than a craft, but it's fair for you to question art because we didn't create it. We didn't, in most cases, we didn't create it. We didn't mix it in most cases, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you're giving yourself less credit than is due. I think that even when you know that all you need to do is 1/10 of a dB at 250 hertz and then leave it alone, it's your knowledge to know you didn't have to touch it that let it come out as beautiful as it did. Because look at that guy, all the guys who messed up that girl's folk album because they decided to put their hands on it when it shouldn't have been touched.
Yeah. I think this is where humility comes into it too, to realize that, shit, this is so fucking good. I don't need to flex my muscle all over it to justify my existence. And that too has its place. And I agree. And I agree with you. I think you should have enough knowledge to be able to know when to push and when not to push. Unfortunately for me, I don't get the luxury of always heavy mixes like that. I would say that, and I'm being very generous here, and this is with no disrespect to any of my clients, 5%, maybe less than 5% of the mixes that come in here, and I think 5% is generous, where something will come in and it's just like, and one such case most recently was Bob, you know Bob St. John. He's near Florida. He's a great producer, mastering engineer. More renowned for his work with that band Extreme back in the day, and he's worked with Duran Duran and does a lot of work in the Latino scene. But Bob sent me this mix, and I just threw it up, and I remember ringing him, and I said, Bob, go fuck yourself, because this is going to make me redundant, you know, if this is what it's going to be, you know. But I was delighted, though, it was just to have the novelty of something that sounded so fucking awesome. And so I did my thing, which actually was quite minimal, but he loved it. He was really happy, and he noticed a few of the subtleties. But again, it was the beauty of what he crafted and what he created. You could just tell as soon as you hit play, it was just like, oh my God, there's a lot of love that's gone into this. This is just amazing. You should
that's part of your art. That's part of your art. You might minimize it and say that was my craft. I don't know. You could say that.
Well, I think one could argue an artistic approach. And I'll give you an example. My dear friend Robert Babich, he's now based in Malta. He's a world-renowned DJ, producer. He does a lot of his own mixing and mastering, and very successful in what he does, predominantly in the electronic scene. And he was telling me about his use of mic pre's as tonal sort of generators, as things to embellish and enhance sound, just for the flavor. Now, I never would have thought of using a mic pre in a master. You know, I mean, the purest
in a mastering studio.
Yeah, in a mastering studio where he would use mic pre's, running through mic pre's to just to embellish the sound somewhat. But you know, that's not an obvious thing that you'd think of. I certainly didn't, and I was really quite surprised. But sure enough, he manages to make it work, and it's part of his shtick. And I don't think it's something he does all the time as a standard cookie cutter approach, but he's developed a methodology of being able to use them. And see, that to me is artistic. That's like, wow, man, you really got outside the box here and doing something that's.
Well, let me give you the devil's advocate response.
Mm-hmm.
You have a rack or more full of different analog gear.
Yep.
Each of which has its own character, and if you need a particular character, you're going to pick it.
Yeah.
I think that this fellow Bob has his different mic pre's, each of which has a character, and he's doing some of the same thing. It just happens that he discovered that he could use a mic pre in that context. So it's just an extension of what it is that you're doing. With, like you say, he discovered that, and I wouldn't have thought of it either. In fact, the reason I wouldn't have thought of it is technical, but I won't get into that.
Yeah.
There's a good technical reason to avoid that. But if he finds that it works for him, that's fine. I would modify, honestly. I would take those mic pre's apart, keep what makes them sonically unique, but take away the extra gain that you don't need when you feed them a line level signal.
Yeah. Tell me something. Do you have is there any piece of gear in your rack that you haven't actually gone under the hood under and tried to extract or improve somewhat to your standard?
Yes. The Mazalek gear I haven't had to touch. The API I've modified. There's a ton of gear that is stock, just the way it came, and there's some that definitely that I've customized. So I would say, of all the gear in the rack, the whole area, maybe 20%, 30% is customized by me. The rest is stock.
Yeah. I don't know. I got into, I think for me, I don't have much customized stuff. I got a little bit of customized stuff, just the stuff I've got from Manly. I've had customized, but everything else is. Yeah. I've had my Verimue done by them, and I've got my console. I've got a transfer console in the monitor section that they built for me in 2001, and but I always found there was a little bit of for lack of a better term, a little bit of wank factor when it came to customization. I mean, I found that for some engineers, it was something that they put out there as this separates me from everybody else because of the certain switches or certain, ICs or, transistors.
They're trying to distinguish themselves from the rest of the.
Yeah, there's a certain, and I think particularly back in the day when I first started out, we had this thing that happened with, the two or three main mastering houses in Melbourne, and it became this kind of one-upmanship thing where, oh shit, we have to go over there because they got one of these, and then you have to think about, oh shit, okay, how can I go up on these guys? Yeah, and that
gear lust. It's gear lust.
Yeah. And that went on for a short period of time. But then as time went on and studios grew, we hit this point of critical mass and this saturation point where everyone had just about everything out there. And so no one really stood out anymore in terms of anything. And then they just came down to skill set and level of service and, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, man.
Well, I tell people that George Massenburg could make a great recording with 2 tin cans and a piece of string.
Yeah.
It's you that counts much more than the tools that you have.
Who are the guys that you looked up, speaking of Massenburg, who obviously we all have incredible respect for as an engineer and a designer of gear? And who are the other guys that, when you were coming up, Bob, were the guys that you admired and respected a great deal?
The same guys that we all love: Doug Sachs, Bernie Grundman, Bob Ludwig.
Yeah. So, do you still want to do any remote recording? Because you were known for all that Chesky stuff back in the day, and still occasionally pull out some of that shit just to, if I really want to impress people every now and again, I do pull out. Spanish Garden's still a track that I still pull out every now and again. And that track, If I Could Sing Your Blues, I forget the singer's name right now. Anyway, it was her name escapes me, but Still sends chills down my spine when I hear it.
Thank you. We're talking about. I'm sorry.
I can't remember either. I can't remember.
You just made it escape me. Like,
yeah, that's okay. We'll put it in the liner notes for the podcast for people. I'll put it in there so people can go and check it out and find it. But then when you tell people that was like a couple of Calrec mics in a room, and it's like, the fuck,
just 2 mics. Yes,
yeah.
2 mics.
It's extraordinary. Yeah. And they were like $100,000 mics that when they were built to some ridiculous, like not even NASA would have gone that deep on their shuttles like you guys went on your mics.
Now, that was a unique education, because you get to hear what real music in a real room sounds like as best as possible. And you get to sit in front of the performers. Can you imagine what it's like to sit in front of a 60-piece big band?
Oh, gee, yeah.
Playing acoustically and balanced, yeah. Yeah. Well, now I'll tell you another story. This might not go over for those who know centimeters, but I'll try it anyway. On the first day of recording Paquito de Rivera's big band, it was my day. So I got to position the musicians and position the microphones. And by the end of the day, I mean, I'm moving the saxes forward 3 inches here and a little bit back there. So by the end of the day, they started to call me Bob 9 Inches Katz. Okay. Yeah. So of course, why women are such poor judges of distance.
Yeah. Go on.
Well, because for years they've been told that this is 9 inches.
Well, it's a dishonest 9 as opposed to an honest 3.
But anyway, what I was getting to is it's a tremendous education to be able to hear that. I'm not saying there aren't different ways to get where you are, but if you have that opportunity, I would never escape it.
Is it true? You probably would know this, but I remember reading a while ago that one of the things they would do at Deutsche Grammophon, and this is where the conductors really came into their own, because the conductor was like the mixer. So I think that there was a methodology they used. I don't know if it was all the time or some of the time, where they'd have, again, not dissimilar to what you did, but the two mics placed near the conductor. And so basically it was the conductor that was going to be in charge of, all the sections of the orchestra. And so hitting him, you were getting this, the perspective of how it was like for the conductor. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you read that yourself or know that, or whether you've done it yourself, or that was an approach that you're familiar with, but it made sense to me to do something like that on the proviso that you had great orchestra and a great conductor that knew how to take care of things.
Well, I always, when I was recording the Chesky recordings, directed 2-track, I always would work from the perspective of an overall balance. But finding that spot, I mean, even if if it turned out to be exactly where the conductor stood, I would doubt it. It could have been as much as 1 or 2 feet forward or 1 or 2 feet back, depending on the acoustics of the room and things like that. So you still had to tweak that. Mm-hmm. But if you started where the conductor, if there is a conductor, if you started where the conductor stood, it would be a damn good starting point.
Yeah. Can we just go on a complete tangent here for a moment? Because I want to talk about.
We're doing it all day long.
Yeah. I'd like to have talk to you and give a little love to your intern Matt Davis, who worked under and still under your tutelage. One of the things I've been very proud of in my career is having had engineers come through here, develop themselves, and then move on to bigger and better things, or to other interests and other pursuits in life. And I've had people say to me, "Oh, don't you get worried if people are going to come and they're going to learn from you and they're going to go off?" And I said, "No, I want them. I'm happy if they need to go." And I always said to everyone that's been here, you never leave this place. The doors here are always open for you to come back to visit. You're still part of the family. And I love the idea of nurturing young talent and helping them to develop their own skills to become their own men and women. And you've done an amazing job with Matt, because he's an absolute freak. And I'm still. I said to you the other day, you were there on the call. I said, I just wish I had a decimal point of his technical skill. And the guy feels he has this crippling self doubt. And look at what he's done. He's a freak. You should be congratulated for that, Bob. You know, he's amazing and a great kid to boot.
I love nurturing someone who had the basic talent that Matt has, which is he's brilliant. He's smart. I'll have to tell him to watch your podcast so he can raise his ego. But far less than ever before. Maybe because he's found himself a lady who Ren Shea, who they live together, and he's never told me whether he loves her or not, but I think that they love each other very much, or at least they certainly respect each other very, very much. And I think that she has become the steadying force in his life. So far less than in the past. He feels far less insecure. He's doing much, much more. And a wide variety of things. I'm too old to do as many different things in 1 week than he is managing to juggle. I wouldn't. I mean, I used to work 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night every single day, but now I like to take the weekends off and do my other arts. But when I was Matt's age, or even your age, I took on a hell of a lot. And I don't know, he's got that energy and it's great. I love watching him. I just hope he doesn't burn himself out. If I told you that he's doing acoustical consulting and DSP design, and he's running his mastering studio, and he's constantly tweaking the acoustics.
And teaching.
I could go on, and he's teaching at Full Sail. I could go on and on. I know that there's other, and he's building studios and consulting on those for people. It's mind-boggling, all the different things that he's doing.
Tell me, Bob, in your career, one thing that plagued me up until maybe 18 months ago or so was a severe case of imposter syndrome. Have you ever gone through your career ever feeling that?
What is it?
Imposter syndrome. You know, that feeling of like, I don't deserve to be here. I don't feel I'm good enough to be doing this. Why are people even using me? One day they're going to, because I'm so non-technical, I always felt that one day I'm going to get found out and I'm going to get kicked out. I'm going to get, run out of town. And, just that, that feeling of just feeling like you don't deserve to be there, or that you're not good enough, or that,
sometimes. Sorry if you're interrupting.
No, not at all. No, sometimes. Go on.
Okay. So, sometimes. But my big problem, this is why I mentioned Ren with respect to Matt, because my problem was some of what he's calling crippling self-doubt, where I didn't feel self-confident when talking to the clients. And I have to give Mary the credit for saying, Bob, you're the doctor. You know more than they know. Just do your thing. You get it done faster than anybody else could. They'll be very happy. It took me a long time to internalize that simple advice. So I had those periods, maybe not the, not the imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
I knew what I knew. I knew all the things that I knew. I just didn't feel as if maybe I couldn't. I felt like I was afraid that I wasn't relating maybe to the client, or that they wouldn't like me, or if I have to make some change on something. Now. If I'm working on, and a new client comes in, and if I have to experiment with something to see if it's going to work, I'll say, I'll just make up a name, Fred, don't worry, and everything is fine. It's going to take me a little bit to work through until you see this smile on my
Yeah.
face. You know that I'm still working on it. And
Yeah.
when you see the smile,
Yeah.
then it's time to be listening.
You got to push the cheeks up to really accentuate it. Eh? So if you wore
Okay.
lipstick, it'd be on your fucking earlobes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned, I got to the point where I could say that and feel confident and know that even though I'm afraid that, oh my gosh, I must be taking forever, it really, your sense of time when you're working is exaggerated. You think it's taking forever, but the client is, they don't know what's happening, and it usually turns out to be only 5 minutes before you're ready to say, here you are.
Yeah. You know what? I got to get my video guy to make a thumbnail out of that.
Oh no.
No. Wait. Just kidding, mate. Just kidding.
No, you can do that.
No, I
So
wouldn't.
think
No, I wouldn't dream it. No, I'd just
it would
maybe
make
do
a
one for
great,
one for me that I could frame and hold up. So, buddy,
it could make a great start for the video
no,
when you put
absolutely,
this is the poster frame.
buddy. It's with sweet sorrow that we have to depart at this stage.
Oh my God!
We could go for hours, and we'll have to talk again. It's just been so nice to reconnect, Bob. So now we have each other's FaceTimes. I can annoy the fuck out of you now for the next little while.
How come it's so cool over there in Melbourne? Yeah, I saw it was 57 degrees Fahrenheit this morning over there.
Yeah,
that's cooler than it is here.
Yeah, I don't know. Our weather here has always been very inconsistent at best. They say Melbourne's a city of 4 seasons in a day, and our summer has been. We obviously had all those terrible bushfires, which have now thankfully pretty much extinguished. Yeah, that was.
I hope it remains extinguished.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think that the nature of this country and the bush and how things grow and just the natural order of things. Bushfires are a part of the Australian landscape and have been for centuries. And the Indigenous people here will tell you that themselves, and because they've managed to manage the land and in a way and be in harmony with it, knowing how to do things. And then, like with a lot of stuff, man comes in and imposes himself upon nature, and you're never going to beat her, at the end of the day. But look, it sparked up a lot of debate around climate change. And look, I don't get involved in that sort of thing because I'm not that I don't have interest in it, but I don't know enough to actually sit down and have a conversation, a reasonable sort of dialogue around it where I can present some kind of thought. Because I don't know. I don't understand the science. But one thing I do know, Bob, and that is that irrespective of whether the climate change is a natural phenomenon or it's been exacerbated by man, I do know that things like recycling and taking care of the earth and, are going to help anyway. So why not implement these things that are going to help the planet anyhow?
Yeah, they say, I mean, if the people who are against climate change are wrong, boy, are things going to be in trouble. So we ought to do everything that we can do.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Anyway, Bob, we'll do another podcast again this year. I've had some really great conversations with lots of different people, and there are some who are just worthy of bringing back, and I'm definitely going to have you on that list. So we'll put you on a little rotating roster, and we can talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But mate, I love you dearly. I really do, Bob, and thank you so much for all your help and your support over the years, and just being a great mentor to me and to many others for that matter. Because whether you realize it or not, and I think I'm the same. People remind us, that we in what we do and what we put out there, there are a lot of people that probably see and hear what we do that we don't know. They lurk. We'll never know about them. We'll never hear about them. But we have, I'm sure, affected people somewhat in various ways. And I'm grateful that guys like you, with your experience, are out there and you're passionate and you speak your mind and you share knowledge and wisdom with everyone. And I've certainly been a beneficiary of it. And thank you for that.
Wow. It's a business doing pleasure with you.
Indeed. Indeed it is. Well, give my best to the lovely Mary, your beautiful wife, and thanks again for your time. And yeah, man, we'll do this again real soon.
Peace.
All right, Ben, back at you, Bob. Thanks so much. There you go, Bob Katz. Thank you very much for our sponsor, Amiga MMA Jiu-Jitsu. Here, I've been putting on the logo for the whole podcast. There you go, George Soteropoulos, who was in the UFC for many years, very successful, is teaching down there personally all the classes. He doesn't just get some of his other, students to come and teach. He's there doing all the classes. So you're getting first-hand experience from George. It's a great club. We are friendly to families and ladies alike, and it's not a place for meatheads. It's a beautiful club, great membership. And if you want to just come down and you want to get fit, or you want to, fight at a more elite level, whether it's MMA, jiu-jitsu, boxing, grappling, it's the place to be. 6 Down Street, Collingwood. That's Amiga Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, 6 Down Street, Collingwood. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. Bob, again, thank you so much, my friend. And as always, say, please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. I love you fuckers. Take care. We'll see you next time. And that's the podcast, Bob.
I'm impressed.
Thank you, sir. It was. I knew it was going to be great. This is why I don't bother with questions and too much research on people. I just pretend like we're stuck in an airport and we've got 3 hours to kill, and it's like we meet up and okay, let's just talk about shit, whatever comes up. So thank you.
I gotta watch it. It seems like we covered a shitload of stuff.
Yeah, man, it was good. Just when, we got a bit techie, we got a bit artistic, we talked a bit about health and life, and it's exactly the way I hope things fall into place. And, to be organic and authentic, and it's the sort of conversation that you hope people would come across and they would listen in, eavesdrop on, and just go, oh, they just want to keep listening because they're just getting into what's being said, and they don't necessarily want to say anything, but they just want to sit there and just passively take it all in. So anyway, buddy, I'm going to love you and leave you, but now that we got this FaceTime thing, if it's okay with you, I think we'll have to keep some more regular contact with each other, and if there's anything I can do for you, man, I'm just really grateful. I really am so grateful. Sorry, Bob, I get a bit emotional, but I'm so grateful, Bob, just for you, because at the time when you met me, you didn't know me from a bar of soap. You took me into your home, and that was never lost on me. To have someone of your caliber, and I'm not putting you above me or putting you on any artificial pedestal, but at that time, to be an unknown kid from Australia, you took me in and helped me out so much, and did it in such a beautiful way.
Oh my God! I hope I can continue to be that way. That's wonderful thing.
I don't think I've ever expressed that to you, man. So
wow.
I thought I'd do it now, because I'd hate to think I'm on my deathbed and I never got to say, that to you and to others like you, which I have done to date, because I think it's important that these things are acknowledged.
Well, I've watched you grow and progress to a wonderful level, and I'm very impressed by what you've done with your studios and your team that you have there. I said, wow, this guy's got his shit together. So it's mutual.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think we need to lose ourselves before we find ourselves. That's been my lessons. That old, like the story of the prodigal son. It's a bit like that. Anyway,
well, if I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the pasture.
Yeah, you will indeed. Well, I'd love to come out to America next year. One of the things I'm trying to tee up, and Ivana Manley, I've been in contact with her, quite regularly. And one thing I'd like to do is I'd like to come to America and do a bit of a speaking tour, and come to some of the audio schools and just go and do a talk to inspire the young up and comers who are coming through. And if
I can help you with that.
Yeah,
well, I can help you find one of those. Yeah,
and I'd love to come, and I'd love to come to LA and New York, and obviously come down to see you. And I have to see Bob St. John in my own, because he's like my separated Siamese twin brother.
Send me a link to some of his work, because I'm not familiar with his.
Okay, all right. Well, what I'll do is I'll send you 2 things I've got to send you today. That is the photos from Ted, the ones that yeah, which I know he's already put them up online, so he'll have no issue. I just happen to have the high resolution ones, which I'm happy to share with you. And Bob, and I'll even send you the unmastered and mastered file of that track that I did for Bob.
Okay.
So that you can actually hear what I'm talking about, and so that you can appreciate what I was getting at before. Mind you, he's one of those engineers that are guilty of sending stuff with virtually no headroom. But hey, it was what it was, and I just had to kind of, I was happy to accept it because it was just so good. But anyway, that's another topic. That's another gripe for another time. Anyway,
it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. I hear, but I'll send it anyway, just again for just so that you can get a sense of what I was talking about. Anyway, love you, man. You take care of yourself.
Take care. Thank you.
I'll talk to you later. All right. Bye, Bob. Bye, mate.